In the sleepy little town of Willow Creek, Texas, everything seemed to hum along in perfect harmony. Shady oak trees lined the streets. White picket fences framed cozy homes. And the Baptist church stood proudly at the town's heart, where the community gathered every Sunday. Everyone knew everyone else's business, from old Mrs. Jenkins feeding stray cats to young Tommy swiping cookies from the general store. But beneath this idyllic surface, dark secrets simmered, waiting for the right moment to erupt. Grace Thompson, 32, was the epitome of the perfect wife. Married to Pastor David Thompson, she was always seen with a radiant smile, her golden hair meticulously styled, and elegant dresses that screamed small-town sophistication. She led Bible study groups, organized fundraisers for orphans, and was the first to drop off a casserole when someone fell on hard times. David, 35, was the town's beloved pastor. His warm, resonant voice during sermons made people feel as if God himself were speaking through him. Together, they were the poster couple for happiness and faith, or so everyone believed. But Grace harbored a secret. Her marriage wasn't the fairy tale it appeared to be. Behind closed doors, David was distant and cold. While he was gentle in public, at home he barely acknowledged her, often locking himself in his study late into the night, claiming he needed to prepare sermons. Grace felt lonely, abandoned in her own home. She craved attention, warmth, and someone who truly saw her, not just the pastor's wife. Everything changed when Ethan Hayes rolled into Willow Creek. Ethan, about 30, was a ruggedly handsome drifter with an undeniable charm. His messy black hair, piercing green eyes, and crooked half-smile turned heads wherever he went. He arrived one sweltering summer day, carrying a worn backpack and an old guitar, renting a small room behind Hank's auto shop. Ethan quickly became the talk of the town. He claimed to be a musician wandering in search of inspiration. But in Willow Creek, strangers were always under scrutiny. And Ethan was no exception. Grace first met Ethan at Mabel's diner, where she stopped to pick up bread for her Bible study group. He was sitting in a corner, strumming soft chords on his guitar. When their eyes met, Grace felt her heart skip a beat. He smiled, and instead of looking away, she smiled back. That was the beginning of it all. Their encounters seemed fated after that. Ethan started popping up wherever Grace went, the grocery store, the park, even the weekend farmer's market. They began talking, at first exchanging polite small talk. But soon their conversations grew longer and deeper. Ethan shared stories of his travels, the cities he'd lived in, and the freedom he found in his nomadic life. Grace, for the first time in years, felt truly heard. She opened up about her youthful dreams, becoming an artist, traveling the world, dreams she'd buried to become the perfect pastor's wife. One evening, with David gone again, Grace went for a walk to shake off her loneliness. She spotted Ethan by the river, playing his guitar under the moonlight. Something drew her closer. They talked for hours, and when Ethan took her hand, she didn't pull away. Their first kiss happened that night, by the shimmering river. And Grace knew she'd crossed a line she could never uncross. Their secret affair burned for months. They met in hidden places, an abandoned house on the outskirts of town, a secluded trail, even the church basement when David was away. Grace lived in two worlds. By day, she was the dutiful wife. But by night, she belonged to Ethan. She knew it was wrong. But the feeling of being loved, desired, made it impossible to stop. Willow Creek, however, was a small town, and secrets never stayed buried for long. Curious glances began to follow them. Mabel noticed Grace blushing whenever Ethan stopped by the diner. Hank, the auto shop owner, saw Ethan slipping out of town at odd hours. And then, someone spotted Grace and Ethan together in the woods, when they thought no one was watching. The climax came at the church's annual fundraiser, a grand event attended by hundreds. Grace, as always, was the organizer, ensuring everything was flawless. Ethan, though not a church member, showed up, saying he wanted to support the cause. But the air that evening felt strangely tense. David, usually calm, seemed irritable. Hank kept glaring at Ethan. And as Grace stood to give her thank you speech, a stranger walked into the hall. The man, dressed sharply but with cold, calculating eyes, introduced himself as Frank Wheeler, a private investigator. Before the stunned crowd, he declared that Ethan was no wandering musician. His real name was Michael Reed, a professional conman wanted for fraud and extortion in 3 states. But that was just the beginning. Frank revealed Ethan had been secretly blackmailing half the town, from Hank, who'd once smuggled moonshine, to Mrs. Jenkins, who'd buried a lawsuit from her youth. And then, Frank dropped the final bombshell. Ethan was blackmailing Pastor David himself. The room fell silent. David, pale and trembling, tried to stay composed, but his eyes betrayed him. Frank produced evidence, letters Ethan had sent David, threatening to expose a shocking secret. Years ago, David had embezzled church donations to pay off gambling debts. Grace, standing there, felt the ground crumble beneath her. The husband she'd thought was perfect was just as flawed as anyone. And Ethan, the man she loved, had used her to dig up dirt on David, playing her like a pawn in his extortion scheme. But the drama wasn't over. In the midst of the chaos, Ethan stood, a chilling smile on his face. He admitted everything, but instead of fleeing, he unleashed one final secret. He announced to the crowd that Grace had been having an affair with him, claiming she'd known about his plans all along but stayed because she loved him. The hall erupted in gasps and whispers. Grace, cornered, couldn't find words to defend herself. She looked at David, hoping for a shred of understanding, but saw only anger and pain in his eyes. The police arrived moments later, arresting Ethan for his laundry list of crimes. But the scandal had already shattered everything. David resigned as pastor, unable to face the community's judgment. Grace left Willow Creek, carrying the weight of her shame and a broken heart. The town, once peaceful, now buzzed with gossip about the scandal, about the unfaithful wife, the hypocritical pastor, and the conman who tore their perfect façade apart. But there was one thing no one else knew, except Grace. In her final days in Willow Creek, she found a letter Ethan had left in the abandoned house. In it, he wrote that, though it started as a scheme, he had genuinely fallen in love with her. That belated confession left Grace wondering, was she a victim? Or had she chosen this path herself? The story ends with Grace standing at a train station, a suitcase by her side, staring at the horizon. She didn't know where she was going. But one thing was certain, Willow Creek, and everything she used to be, was gone forever.